Welcome back to your favorite channel, where we uncover the stories TLC won't touch. If you think the drama at Roloff Farms is just about money and negotiations, think again. Insider chatter suggests this situation may have taken a shocking turn. What started as a family dispute over the north side of the farm could now be something much more serious. The rumor spreading quickly across fan forums is chilling. The farm is poisoned. Allegedly, Matt Roloff has described parts of the land as toxic and potentially unsafe. Some reports even claim he hinted the property may be worthless in its current condition. If that's true, everything changes. This would not just explain why the property hasn't sold. It would raise serious questions about safety, honesty, and trust within the family. But here's the twist. Is there real proof of contamination? Or could this be a strategic move in the ongoing battle over ownership? If the land is being labeled toxic without solid evidence, the consequences could hurt Zach, Jeremy, and the next generation who see the farm as their legacy. We're breaking down the timeline, the alleged report, and what this could mean moving forward. Because this isn't just about real estate anymore. It's about betrayal. Reports say that discussions about the farm had started again. There was hope that Zach, or maybe even a joint effort between the siblings, might eventually take ownership. Then suddenly everything stopped. No explanation.
Why?
Sources claim Matt Roloff called an emergency family meeting. But instead of talking about price or negotiation, he reportedly dropped a bombshell. According to rumors, Matt presented what looked like an official environmental impact report. The document allegedly stated that the soil on the north side of the property was contaminated. This is the same area where the kids grew up playing. The same land that hosts pumpkin season and welcomes thousands of visitors each year. The report supposedly mentioned high levels of lead, oil that may have leaked from old farm equipment over decades, and chemical runoff above state safety limits. Matt is said to have looked at his children and told them the land was not safe. The grandkids can't play here anymore, he reportedly said. The deal is no longer valid. Not because I don't want to sell, but because I can't let you raise your families on hazardous dirt. Think about that moment. For years, the public story has been that the kids couldn't afford the farm or that Matt was being too stubborn about the price. But this changes the entire narrative. In this version, Matt is not the greedy businessman. He is the protective grandfather. He becomes the one trying to keep his family safe. But we need to look at this carefully. Why now? For more than 30 years, Roloff Farms has operated as a working farm. The property has been inspected by the county. Permits were approved for large structures. During pumpkin season, thousands of visitors walk that land. Are we really supposed to believe that a serious contamination report suddenly appeared just as the children were preparing serious offers? This is where questions begin. We have to ask who benefits from this news. If the land is truly contaminated, its value drops instantly. You cannot build homes on toxic soil. You cannot farm safely without expensive cleanup. The market value could fall from millions to almost nothing overnight. Imagine how devastating that would be. Sources close to Zach and Tori say they were heartbroken. Jeremy and Audrey, who have expressed their own interest in farming, were reportedly shocked. It wasn't just about money. It was about a dream. The dream of cousins growing up together on their grandfather's land. The dream of keeping the farm in the family. And according to the rumors, that dream ended not because of a negotiation, but because of a lab report. The emotional toll was heavy. Some reports suggest the kids were genuinely scared. They had spent their childhood playing in that soil. Was it dangerous all along? Some fans are now wondering if this explains Matt's past hesitation and shifting boundaries around the property. Fear is powerful. If you tell a parent their child could get sick from playing in the backyard, they won't argue. They will protect their child first and ask questions later. And that appears to be what happened. Negotiations stopped. Conversations ended. The energy left the room. After all, how do you argue with a chemical hazard report? How do you debate something that appears to be scientific? But this is where suspicion begins. In the middle of this emotional family moment, one person reportedly remained calm. Caryn Chandler. While the children were upset and Matt appeared distressed, Caryn is said to have offered a solution. According to sources, She told the family she hated seeing everyone so stressed. She reportedly expressed concern for Matt, saying he now had land he couldn't sell and a serious problem to manage. Then came a surprising suggestion. Caryn allegedly mentioned having a friend who buys distressed properties. Someone who purchases land that others see as worthless and holds it long-term. She reportedly said she could ask this person to take the property off Matt's hands, possibly for a much lower price, just to help him out. That statement raised eyebrows, because in real estate, there is a known strategy. First, reduce the perceived value of an asset. Make it look risky. Make it seem like a burden. Scare off emotional buyers. Then step in with a solution. Offer to buy it cheap. In this case, if the children believe the land is hazardous, they will walk away on their own. No argument. No negotiation. If true, that would mean the table wasn't just tilted. It was flipped. Of course, these are still rumors. There has been no public confirmation of contamination. No official report released to the public. No clear evidence shared with fans. So, we must ask important questions. If the land is truly unsafe, why was it open to the public for years? If contamination exists, has the county confirmed it? And if this report is real, when was it conducted? Until those answers are public, the situation remains unclear. But one thing is certain. This is no longer just about selling property. It is about trust. It is about family. And it is about whether a legacy built over decades is being protected or quietly rewritten. Does it sound like it could be true? People know that Matt keeps old equipment and scrap around. That has always been part of the farm style. Old tractors, rusty tools, peeling paint on barns. That small bit of truth is what makes the story believable. The best lies often include something real. Yes, farms have old machinery. Yes, older paint can contain lead. But saying the entire north side is unlivable is a huge jump, especially in Oregon where agricultural rules are strict. If the soil were truly dangerous, the county would likely have shut down pumpkin season years ago. Every October, thousands of visitors walk that land. If there had been serious contamination in the air or soil, lawsuits would have happened long ago. So, why would this report suddenly appear now, in 2026 or whenever this deadline is set? Another clue could be the family's silence on social media. In the past, when there were disagreements, there were subtle posts and passive-aggressive comments. This time there is nothing. No public anger. No emotional hints. That silence could suggest legal fear. If Matt showed them a document labeled Confidential Environmental Assessment, the kids might be too afraid to say anything publicly. Even if they doubt it, they would not want to damage the farm's reputation. In a strange way, they could be protecting the brand even if they feel betrayed by it. The emotional damage is real. Imagine being told that the place where you made your happiest memories is actually dangerous. That the soil you played in is toxic. That kind of statement breaks your connection to the land. If the children no longer want it, it becomes much easier for Matt to sell it elsewhere. They would not just walk away. They would run. Now think about the idea of Caryn's friend or a shell company. This is where money becomes part of the theory. If the land is worth $4 million as prime property, selling it quietly for $600,000 would raise questions. It could look like fraud or hiding money from heirs. But if the land is officially labeled contaminated and expensive to clean up, selling it for $250,000 suddenly seems reasonable. It looks like cutting losses. The title moves out of the family name and into a company, possibly connected to Caryn. Once it is owned by that LLC, the kids would no longer have any claim. Then imagine that a year later, a second opinion says the soil is fine or easily cleaned. Suddenly the land is valuable again. The price goes back up, and the children are left with nothing. In this theory, the destruction phase only lasts about a week. A short period when Zach pulls back his offer. Jeremy stops planning. Amy may not even get the full story, or she might receive a softened version to keep her calm. Matt controls the information. He has the document. He presents the fear. And with that fear, he clears the board. But there is a flaw in this plan. Matt and Caryn may not have expected people around them to question the science. They may have assumed that no one would challenge an official-looking report. At first, they were right. The shock was overwhelming. The disappointment was too heavy. The picture is dark. The north side sits quiet. The same fields that once meant family now feel dangerous. Matt might feel both guilt and relief. The children's desire for the land is gone. Caryn may quietly say this was the only way to prevent financial conflict. It is presented as protecting the family, making a smart business choice. But calling family land a toxic waste site is extreme. It feels like burning everything so no one else can claim it. As we look at how each person might feel, Zach could believe he failed by not securing the land sooner. Jeremy may feel sad but also justified in his distrust. Amy might feel unsure, sensing something is wrong but lacking proof. On the surface, it looks like Matt and Caryn have succeeded. The property's value is lowered. The children step away. A buyer waits quietly in the background. But they may have forgotten one person. Chris Merrick. Chris is not just Amy's husband. He has years of experience in real estate. He understands contracts, disclosures, and property reports. While the kids were heartbroken, Chris was thinking, why would a farm that passed inspections for decades suddenly be labeled hazardous? Why was this report delivered privately instead of through county officials? According to this theory, Chris asked for a copy of the report under the excuse of protecting Amy's interests. He may have said that if the north side was contaminated, they needed to ensure the south side was safe too. That simple request put the document in his hands. When he examined it closely, questions began to appear. Environmental studies are usually done by local certified firms familiar with Oregon soil. But the letterhead on this report belonged to a company few had heard of. Let's call it GeoPure Analytics. The logo looked slightly off, possibly low quality. The website address raised more suspicion. Chris reportedly searched the company. Instead of finding a known lab in Portland or Salem, the listed address led to a strip mall in Scottsdale, Arizona. That raised serious questions. Why would an unknown Arizona lab test soil in Hillsboro, Oregon? Transporting soil samples across states is expensive and complicated. There are local labs much closer. And Arizona has strong connections for one person in this story.
Caryn.
Chris did not confront anyone right away. If he had, the explanation might have changed or the document dismissed as a draft. Instead, he quietly started checking facts. He visited county records. He looked for official filings. He wanted solid proof before saying anything. The theory says he may have even walked the north side himself, taking a closer look at the areas mentioned in the report. He approached it calmly, not as an accusation, but as someone who understands how real estate works. If this report was false, it would eventually fall apart under scrutiny. And if the lab itself was questionable, that could expose everything. The story now shifts from fear of poisoned soil to the possibility of a manufactured crisis. If the science was manipulated, then the entire destruction phase was built on weak ground. The investigation is just beginning. The next step leads to the lab, the records office, and the paper trail that may connect the pieces. If the soil is not the only thing contaminated, then the truth will come out. And when it does, the fallout could be far greater than anyone expected. People watching this drama unfold could feel like they were living through a thriller, and that's exactly what was happening behind the scenes. Chris Merrick's quiet investigation slowly began to peel back the layers of fear and deception that Matt and Caryn had set in motion. While the family sat stunned, thinking the north side of the farm was a poisoned wasteland, Chris was uncovering inconsistencies that could unravel the entire story. The questions he asked were simple but devastating. Why a lab from Arizona? Why a company with no prior reputation? Why was this report handed over privately and not through official channels? Every answer pointed to the same uncomfortable truth. Something about this toxic soil narrative didn't add up. Chris's first step was to examine the document itself, line by line. He looked at the formatting, the measurements, the sample locations. He noted that many of the soil readings were oddly consistent, almost too perfect. Real soil tests usually show variations, sometimes wildly differing results even across a few feet. The precision in this report seemed unusual, artificial even. It was as if someone had manufactured data to create fear. That was the first crack in the house of cards Matt and Caryn had built. Next, Chris cross-checked the lab's credentials. He called the number listed for GeoPure Analytics and discovered the line went to a generic voicemail with no contact person. He tried emailing the supposed lab, and the responses were slow and vague, lacking the technical detail a real lab would provide. Then came the critical discovery. The address listed in Scottsdale didn't belong to a scientific facility at all. It was a mailbox in a commercial strip mall. Nothing there suggested it could process environmental samples, much less produce a certified report suitable for legal use in Oregon. This raised a red flag so large that Chris knew he was onto something important. With suspicions mounting, Chris decided to take the next step and collect real soil samples from the north side of the farm himself. Armed with gloves, bags, and a small toolkit, he visited the property in the early morning hours when no one else was around. The fog hung low, the same fog that had made the land look eerie in the report's photos. But as he dug in the soil and collected samples from multiple points, near the old barn, by the equipment graveyard, and close to the pumpkin patch, he noticed something immediately. There were no visible signs of severe contamination. The soil looked typical for a working Oregon farm. Dark, fertile, with normal traces of old rust and organic matter. Nothing that screamed toxic hazard. Chris didn't rely on visual inspection alone. He brought these samples to a certified local Oregon lab he trusted. The results were staggering. Lead levels were within safe limits. Hydrocarbon contamination from old machinery was negligible. There were no chemicals exceeding state safety thresholds. Every reading contradicted the report Matt and Caryn had presented. It was as if the entire toxic soil scenario had been fabricated to create fear and manipulate the family. The report that caused so much emotional pain, halted negotiations, and made Zach and Jeremy abandon their plans was now revealed as highly questionable at best. Armed with these results, Chris prepared to confront the family with evidence. But he knew timing and strategy were everything. This wasn't just about exposing a false report. It was about protecting the legacy of the farm, ensuring the children could make informed decisions, and holding anyone who had manipulated the truth accountable. He arranged a private meeting with Zach and Jeremy first. The brothers were still reeling from the shock of the alleged contamination, unsure of how to proceed. When Chris laid out the findings, showing side-by-side comparisons of the Arizona lab's data versus the Oregon lab's certified results, their reactions were a mix of disbelief and relief. Tears flowed again, but this time they were tears of hope and vindication rather than heartbreak. Chris then approached Amy. He explained the discrepancies and emphasized the importance of transparency with the rest of the family. Amy, who had been kept in the dark by Matt and Caryn's selective information, began to see the larger picture. She realized that the emotional and financial pressure Matt had created was no accident. It was designed to make the children step away from the land, clearing a path for someone else to gain control. And while Caryn's suggestion of the shell company seemed helpful on the surface, it was now clear that the motivation behind it may have been entirely self-serving. The next step was confronting Matt and Caryn. Chris knew this would be difficult. Both had strong personalities, deep knowledge of the property, and years of experience managing the farm and its public image. But Chris had leverage now: factual evidence, lab results, and a growing sense of public support. He arranged a meeting in the main house with Amy present and presented the verified Oregon lab report alongside the Arizona document. The contrast was stark. Where the Arizona lab claimed dangerous levels of contamination, the Oregon lab showed the land to be safe and within regulatory limits. Matt and Caryn were visibly shaken. Their attempts to argue the validity of the Arizona report fell flat against verified scientific evidence. The shock on their faces was almost cinematic. Every denial, every claim of caution, was undermined by cold, hard facts. For the first time, the carefully constructed narrative of poisoned soil, fear, and forced abandonment of inheritance began to crumble. Chris had turned the tide, shifting control back to the rightful heirs. The revelations sparked intense discussions within the family. Zach and Jeremy, once paralyzed by fear of the toxic land, could now see a future where they could actively plan their inheritance and restore the farm to its potential. Amy, who had worried quietly about safety and transparency, was now a vocal advocate for clear communication and truth. The narrative that Matt and Caryn had managed to control for months was unraveling, exposing the emotional manipulation and potential financial schemes at play. With this evidence in hand, the family also had a legal and moral path forward. Chris's documentation of the false report, the questionable lab, and the verified safe soil provided a foundation to challenge any decisions that may have been made under false pretenses. Zach and Jeremy could resume plans for the north side, confident in the knowledge that the land was safe for their families. Amy could step in as a mediator to ensure that any transactions moving forward were transparent and in the best interest of everyone involved. Beyond the family, the story began to ripple outward.